What's up, Heather?
What's up, B?
Well, we're here in Wake Forest at the Whiskey Workshop, where Donovan Lee has crafted one-of-a-kind bourbon furniture and decor for many years.
I'm so excited to learn about your business and your craft. I'm also hoping for some off-camera stories about college days. Isn't that where you two met?
It is.
Well, I'm going to neither confirm nor deny that, but I would like to remind everyone out there that if you could like and subscribe, we really would appreciate it. And with that, let's get started.
So, Donovan, how did you get into this business?
One of my buddies in one of the bourbon groups, he had a whiskey barrel, and he asked me if I could turn it into a cabinet. He was on the board of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and he wanted to put it in their annual charity auction. So, I was looking for a project, and I decided to do it for him. And it took me about 4 months or so to figure out how to build it, but ultimately I got it built, and we put it in the auction, and it was the second highest grossing item in the auction.
Wow.
And
so it succeeded.
It succeeded, and it got me a lot of publicity, and more people in the bourbon group started coming to me to build these cabinets. And I was spending pretty much all my spare time out in the garage working on these things. I even recruited I think she was about 14 at the time, my 14-year-old daughter, to come out and help me. So she was my first legitimate employee. But yeah, so the business kind of took off from there. It's all started with these whiskey barrel cabinets. Since then, we've grown into doing all other sorts of things. Pretty much anything you can make from a whiskey barrel, we make.
You make it.
Furniture, fixtures for restaurants and bars and distilleries, decor items, gift items.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of your work around the Triangle at some of our breweries and distilleries and bars.
Yeah, so we work with Mystic Distillery in Durham. We've worked with Lone Rider here in Wake Forest. Burnt Barrel up in Youngsville, Old Raleigh Distillery out in Zebulon. So yeah, pretty much we cover the gamut of the Triangle.
Yeah, so would you say that the cabinet is still kind of your main?
We've gotten more into tables as well.
Okay, I can see that.
We do a lot of stools also.
I mean, your stuff is the thing that man cave dreams are made out of.
Yes, yeah. So we actually have an order in house right now where it's an entire man cave. It's several tables, stools, chairs, bistro-sized tables.
Off camera, let me know who that is so we can become friends.
Yes.
But I noticed too, on that note, it seems like you have also the ability to customize these kind of for your customer, right?
Yeah. So we do laser engraving. If somebody wants something engraved on there, I can custom design a design, and then we can laser engrave it on the head there. So we do, we can do logos. We do, for corporations, we'll do their corporate logo. For families, we'll do their last name and put their kids' names on there. Yeah, but as far as working with whiskey barrels, there is no formalized training for it. Even somebody who is a master carpenter would struggle with this because nothing with a whiskey barrel is square. It's all curved, it's tapered. No two barrels are ever alike. Some barrels are, an inch wider than another barrel. Some are a half inch taller. The individual staves that make it up, there's not set widths of staves. It's not like they're all either 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, or 4 inch. They cut them to the width of whatever the tree will allow them to cut it to. So when we are working with these things, my artisans need to know how to work with these irregularities because no two are ever the same. So there's been a learning curve. Working with these things, there's no instructions out there on how to work with these things. Barrels, they dry out over time. And you have to account for that because when we get them, they're usually freshly dumped. They're still wet and everything in them is nicely tight and everything. But you can see on this one, I don't know if you'll be able to see on camera, but see how there's gaps in between the staves? That's because the wood is dried out. That whiskey that was in there has evaporated.
That makes sense.
So the first couple ones I made didn't have any of these braces in here. And so when the wood would shrink and these gaps would open up, the whole door would sag down and then the door would no longer close.
Okay. So you figured out how to, wow. So this has a lot of engineering to it.
Basically, I had to build some and see them fail and then learn how to course correct for that so that they don't fail. So that's why we put the bracing in there because this cabinet right here is probably going on 3 years old now, and the door's still closed like
Yeah,
day one.
the doors look great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it seems like just, for some random things I've seen on the market versus what you've got here, you've really put a lot of thought into what would someone want out of this.
Started thinking, okay, what are all the things that I would want in a cabinet? Well, I would like a customized top on. I want it to say whatever I want it to say. I want lazy Susan shelves so that the bottles in the front, I don't have to move those to get to the ones in the back. So both shelves are lazy Susans. The lights, they're motion sensing lights. So when you open the doors, the lights come on.
Yeah,
so you're not
brilliant.
sitting there having to turn a switch on. Even the doors.
Right.
So what we do to keep the doors closed is there's actually magnets set in those doors.
Again, brilliant.
And so those 2 magnets help keep the doors closed.
Well, now that we've seen the finished product, we would love to kind of see what you have going on in the background and
Sure.
kind of part of the amount of the process you'll let us see.
Yeah.
All right. So now we are in, it looks like a workshop.
Yes.
So this is the workshop part of Whiskey
This
Workshop.
is the workshop, yes.
So obviously lots of barrels, but you've picked 2 here to kind of show me the difference between them, right? So
Right.
where do these come from? And obviously I could tell they're different, but tell me why they're different.
Yeah, so there's really only 3 main cooperages. A cooperage is a place that makes barrels.
Okay.
There's really only 3 main cooperages in the U.S. There's a few smaller ones, but there's 3 main ones. There's Speyside, there's Kelvin, and then there's Brown-Forman. Brown-Forman's the parent company of Jack Daniels.
I've heard of Brown-Forman.
Yeah. So they actually make their own barrels. Just about everybody else gets their barrels from one of the cooperages out there. But as far as the barrel construction, it hasn't changed in hundreds and hundreds of years. Whiskey barrels typically are 53-gallon sizes, roughly 35 inches tall, roughly 25 inches wide at the belly. And the reason they're shaped this way, believe it or not, it has nothing to do with aging whiskey or the taste. It has to do with movement, how you move the barrel around. You can put it on its side and roll it, and because it's wide in the middle, you can easily turn it
That's
to change
true.
direction.
Okay, I
Yeah.
never knew that. That's why they were
So
shaped
that's
this
why
way.
barrels are shaped this way, rather than just being
no
straight
idea.
cylinders. It's so you
Okay.
can easily turn it when you're rolling it around. Because when these things are full, they might weigh 600 pounds.
Oh, I'm sure they're super
So
heavy.
they're
They're not light.
Back in the day,
empty.
there weren't forklifts, so
No,
they needed
no.
a way to easily move these things around.
Yeah.
Their experiment with their barrels, because the mash bill and the yeast that they use, those are very protected by, especially established distilleries. They're almost sacred. They're kept under lock. It's like KFC's original recipe, or Pepsi's recipe.
How many herbs and spices?
Yeah. Nobody knows exactly what's there, but they are experiment with the barrels. So this right here is a Brown-Forman barrel. Specifically, it's the Jack Daniels Sinatra release.
Okay.
And what you'll see, the difference between these 2 barrels is obviously these grooves.
Yeah, it's a really intricate pattern of grooves here.
Yeah, it's a spiral. You can see it starts down here,
Yeah.
and it just went around.
That took somebody some time.
Yeah, well, somebody or some machine, I don't know. But the idea is, in theory, these grooves increase the surface area
Okay.
that the whiskey can come in contact with the edges of the barrel. So in theory, that should impart more flavor.
Okay.
Whether it imparts more flavor or imparts flavor quicker, it could go either way. I don't know the true science behind it, whether it really does anything or not, but that is one thing that they're doing, which is fairly unique. There are a few other whiskey brands that are using these style barrels, but the Sinatra release for Jack Daniels is the main one that does that. Another thing they'll do, which isn't so much experimental, is they'll mess with the char levels.
Right, and that's, I think a
Yeah.
lot of us are familiar with that.
Yeah.
The charring and how that affects the taste.
Yeah. So it's grades 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on how charred it gets. And in theory, the more you char it, the more flavor it should release as well. And that's something that we have to deal with here in the shop, is the char.
I was going to ask how that affects you.
Well, it's something we have to get out of there. It's still black, but
I was
there's
getting
no
ready to
longer.
say, I noticed in the finished product in your showroom, you still got that really cool color.
Yeah, it's just not flaky
It's just
anymore.
not flaking.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So yeah, you have an example, stave, right?
a stave. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah.
a stave is
I'm
the
already learning so much.
A stave is the individual piece of wood that makes up a barrel. And so here's one you can see the actual.
Okay, so
char
that's a
on.
really good example of the difference. So obviously this is one you have not
We have
shaved
not-
all that
we have not
off.
scraped
So
it
if
off,
you
yeah.
left that looking like that, like you said, you're going to have a flaky barrel for years to come.
Yeah, I mean,
But it's
I can
really
flake
cool,
it off
like
in my
you
hand.
said, like you can still retain that really cool black or dark brown char color while getting all the flakes off.
exactly.
What do you look for when you're getting a barrel, I think you said that there's a few different options, and you tend to go for, you called it decor grade, right?
Yeah, decor grade, and that's basically for cost reasons. You know, you have decor grade and you have beverage or refillable grade. We don't necessarily need refillable grade for what we do. So with the decor grade, after the whiskey or bourbon has been dumped out of the barrel, there's a grader that comes along and looks at the barrel, and he's going to look at it and he's going to look for problem areas. Maybe this barrel's super leaky, so it's not a good one, good candidate to be refilled.
You don't want to put more
Yeah,
liquid
because
in
you're just going to lose it.
Yeah.
Even though that crack only goes maybe 3/8 of an inch through there, it doesn't really affect the structural integrity of it, which is why it's still fine for us to make furniture out of. But the whiskey in there, it's going to take the path of least resistance. So if it's going to leak, it's going to find that crack and it's going to leak out of there before it leaks out of anywhere
now,
else.
for your preferred barrels, where do your preferred barrels come from? Is it based on ones that are easier to work with, or is it a supply and demand thing? Is it just a consumer demand?
It's really supply and demand. Since I started the business 5 years ago, barrels have become significantly more hard to get. They cost me twice as much as they did when I started the business.
Is that just reflective of general inflation, or is that because bourbon has become a thing? It's become a fad.
All of the above.
Okay.
So bourbon has become more popular. So you have other industries doing bourbon barrel aged items. You have bourbon barrel aged coffee. You have bourbon barrel aged honey. You have bourbon barrel aged stouts. So that's my competition for getting these barrels, much less the ones that have been going over to Scotland to age Scotch in for years.
Right. For years and years and years.
A large portion of the bourbon and whiskey barrels from the United States go over to Scotland to age Scotch in. And once they go across the ocean, they don't come back.
So what's in the most demand for you?
Buffalo Trace.
Okay.
Buffalo Trace by far, that is the most requested
So do
brand
people
out there.
just request Buffalo Trace in general, or do they request specific products?
So
for their favorites.
I do get asked for E.H. Taylor barrels or Eagle Rare barrels, but there's really no such thing because Buffalo Trace, the way they barrel their products, they barrel it by mash bill. So there's two bourbon mash bills. There's mash bill 1 and mash bill 2. There's a wheated mash bill, which is Weller, and then they have the rye mash bill, which might be Sazerac rye or some other rye product that they might make. So there's only 4 Buffalo Trace mash bills, and when they put the distillate in the barrel, they don't necessarily know what that whiskey or bourbon is going to become. It's not until it sits there and ages for a period of time in the rick house, and then somebody goes in there and tastes it and says, okay, this is good enough to be Eagle Rare, or this is good enough to be Blanton's, or E.H. Taylor, one of the other brands. But as far as the barrel is labeled, it's not labeled by the brand.
So it's just labeled mash 1,
mash 1, mash 2, wheated,
rye.
yeah. We'll occasionally we'll get a barrel that we know is Blanton's. They'll write BLNTN on it in Sharpie, and 93 and circle it. And what that tells me is the master distiller, quality person, whoever was going through the rick house and sampled that and said, all right, this one I can tell is going to be good enough to be Blanton's. Yeah.
But you've probably had some Blanton's barrels come through here.
I definitely have.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's why.
And does that affect what you can charge for different things based on where it came from and the lineage, I guess?
Buffalo Trace, because they are so scarce, they do cost me more, and I do not know necessarily when I'm going to get it. It's kind of a crapshoot when I place my order for barrels, what I'm going to get. I don't know until they show up what I'm getting. Case in point, I just got a load of 8 about a month ago. But before that, I hadn't been able to get any for close to a year.
Close to a year?
That's how hard
Wow.
they
I
are
thought you
to
were
get.
meaning like, oh, a few weeks here or there.
No.
Wow.
No. And it used to be I could get them all the time. But Buffalo Trace is such a commanding brand now that other industries want to label their stuff Buffalo Trace aged.
Yes, that's true. Whatever.
Buffalo Trace just has such a commanding position in the whiskey and bourbon industry right now that their name carries a lot of weight, and so they're licensing their name and selling their barrels to age other products.
You can't blame them, right?
Yeah.
They know how to do business.
Yeah.
So, well, this has been so interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. I feel like I learned so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
So, Donovan, thank you for showing us around the Whiskey Workshop. This has been some amazing stuff. The products are incredible. The craftsmanship's incredible. It's truly like nothing I've ever seen before. And you took a vision and you've really seen it through from start to finish product. So if people talk about grain to glass, I guess this is Well, come up with some neat way of saying this,
Yeah.
but it's certainly, you're an inventor.
Yeah.
But we come to my favorite part of bourbon, which is drinking it.
Of course.
I mean, the barrels are great, and I'm glad what the barrels do, but let's find out what the barrels did for these. Our
sounds like a
first one is Weller Special Reserve, but this is a barrel select done by one of our local establishments here. We were able to grab a bottle, and we know that you are you're a Buffalo Trace guy.
Yeah.
So we're in the family, or at least in the family. So we'll give this a shot first and see what you think.
So what are you getting, B?
Well, it's Weller.
It
It's
is Weller.
That's there's a description, right?
Well done.
I get the caramel up front and the sweetness, and then at the back there's just enough. For me, there's just enough spice to know I'm drinking bourbon.
I was about to say, I definitely get the spices at the back.
Yep.
And like we've talked about before, a little bit of heat, but not the burn all the way down.
And it holds well.
What about you, Donovan?
Yeah, so the Weller Special Reserve is one of my favorites, but I will say that this swings above your typical Weller Special Reserve, which is to be expected. It being a barrel pick. The fact that these guys selected this specific barrel, it stands to reason that it would be better than your traditional Weller Special Reserve. And when you do these private barrel picks, you're essentially getting a single barrel product because you are picking the barrel.
That's
where
true.
Weller Special Reserve typically is a small batch.
Yep.
Definitely is a step above your traditional Weller Special Reserve, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely get the caramel at the front. It's definitely that sweet to spicy at the end. What flavors do you get?
The caramels, I want to say a little bit of apple spice. I don't know the exact perfect descriptor for that flavor that I'm getting, but to me, this bottle, all those flavors are accentuated a little bit more beyond what you would typically get in a Weller Special Reserve. Lots of times with Weller Special Reserve, you don't have a lasting flavor profile. It kind of peters off kind of quick for me because I tend to like a little bit higher proof. I tend to like around 110 proof.
Okay.
But this seems to last a little bit longer, like you do experience with some of those higher proof products.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying with the apple spice because I was too trying to come up with, because in my head it was like it's the fall flavors, but I couldn't articulate what it was, but that was what I meant by spice too.
Yeah.
It feels like an apple pie. And so where would you put this on our scale?
I would say this is probably a hush your mouth. Yeah.
And would you consider that for all Weller Special Reserves, or is this one a little bit bumped up because of what you were talking about?
A little more bumped up.
It's a little bumped up, yeah.
Yeah, just because it does have a more lasting flavor than a typical Weller Special Reserve for me.
So I noticed we're switching. B, what did you just
We
pour
are.
for
So
us?
this is Buzzard's Roost. It is out of Bardstown. Now it is distilled in Indiana, so we've got our suspects about that. But it is bottled and aged in Bardstown, Kentucky. This was actually a gift. This came to us by Scott's family, and I had not seen it on the shelves in North Carolina until I went to Youngsville, North Carolina, and it was on the shelf.
It's there.
But that, and they even had the barrel strength, which is what we have here at 114 proof. So this is getting a little closer to your sweet spot in terms of what you like. But I had not had Buzzard's Roost before.
So I noticed right off the bat that this is a little bit darker color than
Definitely.
the Weller, for sure.
Well, there's been no.
It's not watered down.
No water added.
I'm just going through my steps. Color,
Absolutely.
aroma, taste.
But it's certainly
it's not.
darker than the Weller.
See, I really enjoy that. I really like the beginning taste of that and the mouthfeel. It's almost got like that light syrup consistency.
It's
which
very
I enjoy.
buttery.
Yes,
Buttery. It coats your tongue.
I was thinking about pancakes and like maple syrup and butter.
Yeah. It does
I
have
like
a
that
good
description.
mouthfeel. It kind of coats the tongue, and by coating the tongue, that helps the flavor. It prolongs the flavor. It just kind of sits there on your palate. I get a definite star anise flavor to this.
Okay, now you're getting fancy.
It's almost like a black licorice. And if I didn't know better, if I didn't know that this was distilled in Indiana, I would swear that it's a Willet product because that is a flavor profile
Now that you
emblematic
say
of Willet
that,
products.
I had never put two and two together, but you're right. That licorice anise, which, anise is kind of an unusual flavor. But if you've had like traditional biscotti, that's the traditional spice, and for all of you out there, so kind of picture that, and that kind of goes a little with the buttery that we're talking about. But you're right. I had never thought about that being comparable to Willet.
Yeah.
So next I'm gonna have to compare.
For me, that is a flavor that jumps out of
Willet products.
Out of Willet products, but will jump out over any other flavor that might be in there. I don't. Maybe my palate's just more sensitive.
I think that there are.
I'm the same with
flavors,
cilantro.
Yeah.
Cilantro just not
But
that it would be
are you team hate it or team like it?
I'm team hate it. Tastes like soap to me.
We make a lot of cilantro based, a lot of cilantro stuff.
We do. We eat a lot of Mexican food.
Anything we talk black licorice, that's a strong flavor profile. I think that the fact that jumps out is not unusual. But I will tell you that I'm not a big black licorice fan, but I could drink this. This is not a problem.
No.
It has. I really like your term buttery, because I always talk about good mouth. The first time I had Colonel Taylor, the first thing I said is I could really feel it, and I get that with Colonel Taylor. I really like that description. What kind of flavor did you get? He's that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying when it was that syrupy, which buttery, almost like a maple syrup, like light maple syrup consistency at the beginning. A little bit of sweet, and then, like you said, going into that little bit of spice. Now that you said the anise, that's what's sticking in my head. What do you think, B?
Oh, I definitely. When you said pancakes, and I don't the buttery. Donovan said, and then the pancakes with the sweetness. I get the baking spice in this. I know what that is. I get that.
Like that allspice,
or something you'd find in an apple pie, right?
Yep.
Or a good apple pie. But this is a little different, and I like it.
Yeah, I like it too.
So where are you going to rank it?
Honestly, this one is hush your mouth for me. I really enjoy this one.
Okay.
So I'm not trying to just make everyone happy today.
Well, you don't have to.
All the bourbons, or whiskeys, I'm not trying to make them all happy.
Well, we generally don't make anyone happy, so that's okay. That's all right. That's not exactly our forte. How about for you?
I'm going to go with the dog will hunt. It's good. It's good. The anise flavor is not my favorite, and that's why I don't care for a lot of the Willet products. And I wish I knew where that flavor comes from, whether it's something to do with the yeast strain they use, or the water that they use, or something in the mash bill.
Well, now I'm going to be on a mission. I'm going to find this out now.
I want to know how that flavor is so emblematic to Willet products, and then also to this product.
Yeah. So this last one we have is Davis County. Am I saying that right? Davies.
I would say Davies.
I would say Davies County.
Davies, you're correct. Davies County. Toasted barrel. This is it says toast level, light, and it's their toasted finish series, lightly toasted American oak, Kentucky straight. This is actually by Lux Row.
Actually,
okay.
And you know what? You busted out a Lux Row glass.
I have been to Lux Row, yes.
Okay. But we picked it up actually in all places in Maryland, on a trip to Philadelphia to see Green Day, of all things. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Because when I think bourbon, I think Green Day in Philadelphia.
It's a lighter color than the Buzzard Roost.
All right, Barrel Guy, I got a question.
Okay.
So they toast it before they char it, in terms of barrels.
Apparently, that releases different flavors from the wood than charring does.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
It was so interesting earlier when you showed us like the effects of charring before you get all of that off of there, because I had pictured it in my head, but I had never seen anybody show me what it looked like before somebody has done what you do to it, and I thought that was fascinating. And I can see now. Before, I don't think I understood. Okay, flavor barrel. I understood it in an abstract way.
Yeah.
But seeing the effects of what these things do in toasting versus charring, I can kind of see now, okay, I can see how that would affect the flavor. Yeah.
There's actually a chemical reaction happening in that wood when you apply the heat.
So I feel like
it's
toasted...
kind of activating the tannins and just everything in the wood.
How are you? Because I feel like toasted is a thing right now. How are you feeling about that trend? Are you into it? Do you like the toasteds?
Well, it's kind of like what Popeyes did with the chicken sandwich. you know.
Well, I don't know. I don't know where you fall in the great chicken debate because, you know, there's the Bojangles, there's the Popeyes, there's
Yeah.
the Chick-fil-A. I don't know where
But,
you live
know,
on that scale.
they started the whole chicken sandwich craze, and it started a battle amongst the
did.
fast. So, you know, it was Elijah Craig who came out with the first.
Right. And we have
Well
that one.
known
We have
toasted
that one on
bourbon.
our shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then everybody followed suit. And you couldn't get Elijah Craig toasted when it first came out. It was like all the rage. I'll be honest, personally, I can't. If you were to blind, you know, serve me a toasted versus non-toasted, I'm not going to be able to tell the
See,
difference.
I feel like this one tastes very different. I don't know that I would pick it out and say it was toasted and that's why.
Yeah.
But it definitely tastes
I
very
think
different.
it's night
to me.
and day from this.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely.
It's not-
Well, we're a lower proof, aren't
It's
we?
96%, so we definitely a lower proof. But so sometimes we have ones where I'm like, ooh, my wife would like this.
Me. They feel a little thinner, a little less of that syrupy consistency. That could also just be me.
It could be that you're following up 100.
That
14
also
proof.
could be the case. That could also
Single
be
barrel.
the case.
You've
Single
already
barrel,
destroyed your
fast straight.
palate.
Yeah, it's straight
Who knows?
fast.
Although
straight.
the same thing I did the same thing when we tried the Basil Hayden toasted recently. Remember?
But this tastes to me significantly different from the Basil Hayden.
I like it better than the Basil Hayden toasted.
No, but there's
But it's not as thick.
there's an aroma there that's very different for me. I just can't.
Honestly,
having
I
trouble
think
placing
I
it.
think I obscure my palate when I hear toasted because I just start thinking about marshmallows.
I think that's kind of what they want you to think of, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're trying to get you to envision. And they're talking about the caramelization process.
is
That's what
good.
they want you to think.
It is pleasant. It is easy to drink. It's not nearly as complex as the first two.
Oh no.
What do you
Definitely
think,
not.
Donovan?
You know, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Like, this is something that if, you know, I was going to go over and watch a state football lose another game, you know, I
can't say anything this year.
I could have several of these
I
over
might
the
have
course
a whole
of the game.
bottle after the last fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah. It's an easy sipper. This is one that's not going to offend a lot of people.
Nope.
Right. This would be a good starter bourbon.
Yes.
Or whiskey, yeah, for
Yeah.
people.
You
Well,
know,
now that we've opened it, we probably should have done it in a different order. But we live and we learn and we move on.
this would be a doggle hunt. Yeah, I would definitely be happy, especially to somebody who wasn't into bourbon. You know, get them in it. What did you say it was 96 proof?
96 proof.
Yeah. So it's actually a little high for a starter
So
bourbon.
this
Yeah.
is, yeah, it is true. Actually, not
But
like
it
an
doesn't
80.
it doesn't drink as high as 96 to me.
No,
No.
there's no burn. So
Definitely
I was thinking, so this is a doggle hunt for me. But I was also, as we were sipping this, was thinking about how this would be a really good mixing bourbon, not because it's bad, but because of that kind of sweet, kind of light profile.
Yeah, and it's not going to impart anything offensive.
Exactly. It's only going to enhance.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this would be a really good one to kind of mix this fall and winter with some other things for sure.
Now I'm
What
kind
is it for you, B?
Oh, it's a doggle hunt. I'm learning a little bit more about Lux Row. You said you visited Lux Row.
Yeah.
And I know that they do some products for other people as well.
Yeah.
That's a thing. So yeah, and I know that they've got their own products. They've got a Lux Row product. So
Yeah, Rebel. They have a lot of different labels.
So before we leave you, I always like to ask like weirdly personal questions.
Oh yeah.
So first, what is your go-to bourbon or whiskey cocktail?
I'm usually just with one little piece of ice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, you
I-
just
I-
like a little on
I
the
mean,
rocks.
I'll do an old fashioned every now
Yeah?
and again, but
Okay. That was my gateway.
yeah, but no, usually just a little bit of ice, just enough to get it cool. I don't want it to water down, so you know, I'm a big
then-
ice ball guy.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. He has these Star Wars ones, which sound really cool in theory, but they have so many grooves. It's really hard to get
It's
them
really hard
out
to
of
do.
the thing. So
Yeah.
we tend to default to the cubes. And then my next question is, which of the current hot fad bourbon trends is your favorite? So we've got the port in the red wine barrels. We've got the toasted. We've got the different bald and bond versus barrel strength versus this versus that, versus the boutique distilleries. What are you really into?
I tend to stick around the bottled and bond or higher up to maybe 110. I don't really jump on the trends easily.
I would
do
have
like
guessed,
to-
guessed that about you.
I do like to support local though, or fairly
Yeah,
local.
yeah.
So you got Old Raleigh Distillery out here in Zebulon. You got Mystic in Durham. Lone Rider's doing some stuff. So I do like to try their stuff. Yeah.
So, and I feel like that fits with your brand too.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
Being a small business owner, you know,
Absolutely.
they support me. I've done a lot of work for those guys, so I like to support them as well.
Well, and we're
Absolutely.
excited to support you, and we're so thankful that you had us
thank
here. We enjoyed it so much. I feel like I learned so much today.
Yeah, and we will have all of the Whiskey Workshop's connections into their Facebook, their profile, their webpage, whatever else.
Their
You guys-
Etsy.
You have
They're an
Etsy.
Etsy, yeah.
Etsy. They do amazing products here. Please give them a call. Find them on Etsy, and we know just the game. I just want one of those Pac-Man games on a bear.
I
That's
also want
amazing.
one of the fire tables.
Yeah, and,
So,
and my wife's
personally.
going to leave the fire table. So thank you again, sir, and cheers, y'all.
Cheers, y'all.
Thank you.
Hey,
Cheers.
we can cheers.
We can cheers.
Yeah,
cheers.
you can grab one of mine.
Yeah.
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers, y'all.